Okay, this is the third and final part of converting quadratics. We went from vertex to standard, from factored to standard. We went from standard to vertex and factored to vertex. So now we have to go the two forms into factored form, standard to factored and then vertex to factored. Okay. Just like when we were converting to vertex form, to convert from vertex form, you had to find the vertex. To convert into standard factored form, you're going to have to factor. Because remember, you have to be able to find, if you can find the x-intercepts another way, that's all you really need. But the only way we know how to do that is to factor. So I have the first example already written up. F of x equals 2x squared minus 4x minus 30. Now again, factoring never goes away. It's always going to keep coming back. Remember the first step to factoring. The first step to factoring is always look for a GCF. And this one does have a GCF. It has a GCF of 2. Okay. The A value is 2, the B value is negative 4, and the C value is negative 30. They're all even, so we could factor out a 2. Leaving behind 2 times x squared minus 2x minus 15. Okay. Now it's important that that 2 stays out front, because remember, each form has an A value, and that A value has to stay the same. So if our A value is 2 in standard form, it has to be 2 in factored form. So that 2 has to stay out front. Okay, so now we have a trinomial with a leading coefficient of 1. So you're going to do product sum method. Product sum, remember, is you're looking for two numbers that multiply to the last and add to the middle. Now again, the product sum only works if there's a 1x squared, if there's not a number in front of x squared, which there's not anymore because we took out the greatest common factor. So we got to figure out what multiplies to negative 15 and adds to negative 2. Okay. So if you just run through the factors of 15, you got 1 and 15, and you got 3 and 5. Okay. 3 and 5 are two numbers apart. Since the middle number is negative, that means the bigger number has to be negative. So it's going to be minus 5 and positive 3. Negative 5 plus 3 is negative 2. Negative 5 times 3 is negative 15. That works. That's factored. So we're in factored form. Okay. Let's do one more. Okay. Again, notice in that previous problem, the A value didn't change. It's 2 all the way through. Okay. And also, just by looking at these, you should be able to figure out some information. For example, we know the y-intercept is going to be negative 30. We know the x-intercepts are going to be 5 and 3. Okay. From either of those forms, you'll be able to find the vertex, and then you're going to have your 5 points needed to graph. Okay. All right, so the second one, let's do f of x equals negative x squared plus 16x plus 60, minus 60. Okay. Again, we're going to have to factor. So first things first, look for GCF. Okay. Well, you got negative 1, you got 16, and you got 60. There's not going to be a greatest common factor there. However, you do have this negative sign out front. Okay. Now remember, the easy way to factor is product sum, and you can only do that method if there's a 1 in front of x squared. Okay. We don't have a 1 in front of x squared, we have a negative 1. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to take out the negative sign as our greatest common factor. Okay. So I'm just going to pull out a negative 1, and all that does is change all the signs. So instead of negative x squared, it's positive x squared. Instead of plus 16x, it's minus 16x. And instead of minus 60, it's now plus 60. Okay. Now again, think about your A, B's, and C values. The A value in the standard form was negative 1. The B value in standard form was positive 16. and the c value is negative 60. Okay. The only thing that has to stay the same is that a value, so that negative 1 has to be in front in factored form, and it is. Okay. All right, so now factor. We now have an x squared in front of x, of 1x squared, which means we could use the product sum method, which again always follows the same format as long as there's not a number in front of x squared. So we have to find what multiplies to positive 60 and adds to negative 16. Okay. Well, the only way you can multiply to a positive and add to a negative is if both terms are negative. So what multiplies to 60 and adds to 16? 60 is a bunch of factors. It's now 1 and 60, 2 and 30, 4 and 15, 5 and 12, 6 and 10. 6 and 10, 6 plus 10 is 16. So minus 6, minus 10. Negative 6 times negative 10 is positive 60. Negative 6 plus negative 10 is negative 16. Okay. And that is now factored, and so that is factored form. Now again, just by looking at these two forms, you should be able to identify the x-intercepts and the y-intercept. And then from either of those two forms, you should be able to figure out the vertex and the axis of symmetry, and that'll be your five points. Let's do one where the number in front is an x squared. Okay, I'm going to show an example that's a little different now. It's going to be a standard form example into factored form, but there's going to be a number in front of x squared that we can't factor out. So we have f of x equals 2x squared plus 3x plus 1. Okay. Again, first step is always look for a GCF, but there isn't one. Okay. So we can't factor this product sum because there's a number in front. So you have to use the guess check method or the brute force. This one's not that bad because 2x squared is prime and 1 is prime. Okay. So remember, for this method, if there is a number in front of x squared, you know you have to find two numbers that multiply to 2x squared. And the only things, and those are going to go in the first slots, the only things that multiply to 2x squared are 2x and 1x. And then you look. You know the last terms have to multiply to the last value of the trinomial. So you figure out what multiplies to 1. Well, the only thing that multiplies to 1 is 1 and 1. Okay. And it's both plus, because everything's plus. Alright, so that is factored. But is this factored form? So we got 2x plus 1 and x plus 1. Well, this is a factored, it is factored, but it comes down to your a value. The a value in the original was 2. The a value in this one is not 2, it's 1. Okay. Now in true factored form, and again, we're not going to do many of these, especially not in this online version. True factored form has to have an a value. And your x values, because again, remember factored form is x minus p and x minus q. Okay, this isn't an x, that's a 2x. So in true factored form, you'd have to factor out anything that gives you not a 1x. So we'd have to factor out this 2. So you could take out that 2, it'll leave behind x, but it'll also leave behind 1/2. So remember, to factor out, you're basically dividing each term by 2. And then this one is fine because it did have an x. So that is the proper factored form of the original. Okay. Now again, that's not how we factor trinomials, but that's how you would convert it into factored form from standard form. It has to be x's inside the binomials. X minus p, x minus q. Can't be 2x, can't be any other x. So if there is another x, you do have to pull it out, even if it means you're going to have a fraction. All right, and again, you should be able, the x-intercepts for this one would be -1/2 and -1. Y-intercept would be +1. Again, you should just be able to gather these things as you go. All right, the final version is we're going to have to go from vertex form to factored form. This is the longest one. I'm not going to give you many of them. If you want to go from vertex form to factored form, you have to take a detour. You have to go from vertex to standard to factored. Okay. So you're actually moving into all three forms on this one. Okay. Now we already did vertex to standard, and we already did standard to factored. So this isn't anything new, it's just you're doing multiple of these. All right, so this first one, let's do f of x equals x minus 2 squared minus 4. All right, so this is vertex form. So VF. Okay. All right. We have to now go into standard form. Okay, so we're going to go from vertex to standard. Okay. Remember how we went from standard form? We did this before break. But it involves expanding this out. Okay. So instead of x minus 2 squared, we should write it as x minus 2 and x minus 2. Don't forget the minus 4 at the end. So expand. The next step was to FOIL. X minus 2 times x minus 2 is a perfect square trinomial, so it's going to be x squared minus 4x plus 4. Again, don't forget the minus 4 at the end. And the last step of moving into standard form is to combine like terms. Combine like terms is always going to be these last two. All right, well, plus 4 minus 4 goes away. That's just 0. So our standard form is just going to be x squared minus 4x. And that's standard form. Okay. Now it doesn't look quite like a normal standard form. Our a value is 1, our b value is -4, and our c value is 0. So it's not a typical standard form. All right, so now we're in standard form, so now we have to go into factored form. Okay. To go into factored form, we have to factor. All right, well, how do we factor this? It's not a trinomial, so we can't really use our trinomial techniques. There's only 2 terms, but it's not a difference of squares, because 4x isn't a perfect square. So we're just going to have to factor GCF. So both terms, x squared and 4x, have a value of x, which is going to leave behind x minus 4. That is fully factored, so that is your factored form. Now again, it doesn't quite look like factored form because, again, we needed an a value of 1, but we don't really have an a value of 1. But we kind of do. This is really just 1 times x minus 0 times x minus 4. Okay, now, of course, we don't write the x minus 0 because x minus 0 is just x. Okay, but that's what it would look like in the proper factored form. So again, you should be able to find your x-intercepts. Your x-intercepts are going to be x equals 0 and x equals 4. You should be able to find your y-intercept from factored form, or from standard form. Your y-intercept is always the c value. Well, the c value is 0, so the y-intercept is 0. And then from the original problem, you should be able to find the vertex. The vertex is h comma k. H is 2, k is -4. So all these forms together give you all the information you need about a parabola, about a graph of a quadratic. Now again, this one's a little time consuming, but again, look at all this information we found. All right, we'll do one more. Let's do a long one. All right, if you want to pause it and try this on your own, go for it. I'm just going to go through it. Let's do -2 times x plus 2 squared plus 32. Okay. All right. Expand. We're currently in vertex form. We need to go into standard form. So we're going to expand this with -2 times x plus 2 times x plus 2 plus 32. Oops. All right, then we're going to FOIL. The -2 stays outside. X plus 2 times x plus 2 is x squared plus 2x plus 2x. Inside, outside, that gives us 4x plus 4 plus 32. Okay. This one wasn't in the previous problem, but it is in this problem. We're going to have to distribute. Distribute that -2. So -2 times the trinomial, it'll be -2x squared minus 8x minus 8 plus 32. And then combine like terms. Okay. Combine like terms is going to be these last two, the -8 plus 32. It's going to give us -2x squared minus 8x plus 24. Okay. All right, so that is now in standard form. Okay. Now we're going to go standard to vertex. Or not standard to vertex, standard to factored. Okay. So first up is what we're going to have to find a factor. Okay. We're going to factor GCF. Because there is the greatest common factor here. Greatest common factor is 2. But again, we're going to take out the -2 because we want to have a 1x squared in front. So we're going to take out -2. Just going to leave behind opposite signs for all of these and then divide by 2. So x squared plus 4x minus 12. Colors. And then finally factor product sum, because there's now a 1 in front of x squared. So find out what multiplies to -12 and adds to +4. The -2 stays out front. We know it's going to be x and x. So what multiplies to -12 and adds to +4? That's going to be -2 and positive 6, which is now in factored form. So again, just going through these three forms, we started in vertex, we ended in factored. We also hit standard on the way. Okay. So again, if you want to just run through real quick and find all the important information, first of all, we know the A value. The A value in all these is -2, so it's going to open down. It's going to have a maximum value. The vertex from vertex form is -2, 32. The axis of symmetry is -2. From standard form, we could find the y-intercept. The y-intercept is the c value. The c value is 24. And from factored form, we could grab the x-intercepts. The x-intercepts are p and q, 2 and -6. So that is all the conversions. Again, there's going to be a short worksheet and then a mini quiz tomorrow. Okay. So you should be comfortable going into all these forms from every other form. There's 6 of them. We did them all over 3 days. All right, check Google Classrooms. Have a great day.